John Luff is an Associate Fellow with the Russia and Eurasia Programme at Chatham House and a former NATO official based in Moscow. He joins us now from London. Very good morning or evening to you. Let's talk about Europe first. Did you get the impression, John, that there was a bit of a scramble to get all of those leaders together and come up with a united position?
Yeah, it definitely was. I was in Munich at the weekend, and it's fair to say that the Europeans were absolutely stunned by what they heard. The speech by J.D. Vance really took people by surprise, and then before that, the new U.S. Defense Secretary had signaled that the Europeans needed to step up and effectively do the hard work for the US in implementing effectively any peace deal that might be agreed by President Trump and President Putin. But I think the real shock is that the US sees fit to negotiate over the heads, firstly, of the Ukrainians, and then really only to involve the Europeans at the last moment. So the Europeans got together very quickly today to try to hammer out some sort of unified position. And the British Prime Minister already has taken the lead here by saying the UK is prepared to put troops on the ground. But note, his remarks are very cautious. He's talking about a durable peace deal being in place. That's a precondition. And secondly, that the US ultimately has to provide the backing, the security backing for this deal. So the US might not have boots on the ground, but it has to be in a position, if a peacekeeping force were attacked, to then back it up.
Is there any indication, John, that they spoke about territory? Because it's one of the things that is going to be a massive sticking point.
No, I don't think there's any indication they've got into those sort of details yet. In terms of territory, I think there is an assumption that the only way this war can be brought to an end is firstly by a ceasefire that would probably be along the point of contact where the Russians and Ukrainians are presently along the front line. Now, the Russians are advancing very slightly each day, but it's not so rapid that they're going to overrun a significant part of the country while these peace talks advance. And the Russians have a record, by the way, of negotiating and fighting at the same time. But I would suspect that any peace deal that emerges is going to ensure that Russia preserves its land corridor to the Crimean Peninsula so it can secure its position in Crimea, and it holds on to pretty much all the territory that it's taken so far. Ukraine has occupied a small part of Russia's territory in the Kursk region. That will probably be exchanged, but it really is these days very, very small as the Russians have advanced and tried to push the Ukrainians out.
Interesting. Let's talk politics. President Trump has always said that other nations, particularly Europe, should spend more on their defence. He might get his way the way this is all unfolded, mightn't he?
Oh, I think that is for sure. I mean, the Americans have been saying for decades that the Europeans need to step up and spend more on defence. They only really, under President Trump during his first term, started to state this publicly. But the Europeans have really heard the message that they've now got to do the heavy lifting, and this is going to put an extreme strain on the budgets of several countries, including that of Great Britain. And it's going to be interesting to see how our electorates respond when the finances of so many countries are in a parlous state after COVID and other pressures. Finding another or adding another 1% to the defence budget or even more. That is a very, very big requirement. So I think we have some very, very challenging times ahead.
Let's go to Saudi Arabia then. We've got Sergei Lavrov and Marco Rubio there. They're holding initial talks. Is it your understanding that the idea here is to tread carefully and see where they can go from here and if there will be this presidential meeting?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. I mean, I think their first task is to probably try to restore to some degree US-Russian relations, which have taken a terrible knock since the start of the full-scale war in Ukraine 3 years ago. They've both drastically reduced the sizes of their embassies. There's been very, very little interaction between the two countries. But we know that in recent weeks there have been there have been official contacts, and I think it came as a great surprise to particularly the Ukrainians, but also to the Europeans, to know that President Trump had had this 90-minute conversation with Putin, and agreed that they were going to start peace talks immediately. But in some ways, the Europeans should have not been so surprised. I mean, Trump had telegraphed this very clearly in his election campaign, that he was going to end the war, and he said he was going to end it very quickly in one day, which of course is an absolutely absurd notion. But I think Trump is a man in a hurry, and his Ukraine special envoy, General Kellogg, who spoke in Munich, he pointed out, I was at a meeting where he pointed out that we're doing things in Trump time. And that means that the US is going to move very fast. And of course, for the Russians, that presents a big opportunity. When the other side is in a hurry to do something, that's when your bargaining power, of course, is increased.